people.
It's serotonin. It's the serotonin in the brain. Okay. It starts to get produced. So, we are finishing, and the number of attendees is demonstrating this. And this is our last technical seminar. Afterwards, we will have the class with Juan Carlos and then the public talk by Gordon. Today we have invited Pablo Cuartas, which is also a faculty member of our institute, and to work about the magnetic fields and habitability of supernovas. Okay, Pablo, thank you very much.
So, thank you, Jorge. And what I'm talking about today is about our research project, our main work in the faculty, my work as a PhD student, and of course the work of Jorge and other colleagues and collaborators that help in this research program. So what I want to say today is a little bit about the basic physics of our research, and after that I will go very fast through our main results of the research on magnetic fields and habitability of supernovas. Okay, first I want to thank my main collaborators and of course colleagues in this research. First, Professor Jorge Juan, he is the main investigator on this project. Of course, he's my advisor in the PhD thesis, and he's the commander-in-chief of this thing. Professor Jaime Hoyos, he is an investigator from Universidad de Medellín that collaborates with us in this project, and of course, a special thank to Sebastián Bustamante, that was one of our students that helped us, especially with the thermal evolution models that we use to our research. So, what we're gonna show today. First, as I told you before, I want to show you the main basic physics where is based all the research about magnetic fields and habitability on Earth. So the first one of this is the models for internal structures of Earth-like planets or terrestrial planets, and I will show you the main indicators of the main characteristics of the models for the interior structure. The second one is around the magnetic properties and how terrestrial planets start and maintain magnetic fields and how this will happen. And the third and no less important physics or our model is the model of thermal evolution of the planet. Based on these three, we can to develop our theories and of course find some results that I will show you later. The first important thing that we take into account to our research was the role of the rotation period of planets in the magnetic field regime. In fact, this is our first main result, and it was published in an Icarus paper a few years ago. And the second one, and our last and important result, is how the thermal evolution of the planet is involved in the magnetic rotation of potentially applicable supernovas. And finally, of course, I will show you some conclusions about all the research, okay, about all the project. So, start with the interior of terrestrial planets and, of course, super-Earths. There are a lot of previous models for internal structure of terrestrial planets, based mainly in the works of Sarah Seeger, MIT, and Diana Valencia, that is a Columbia College, that it's right now in Canada, that was in MIT and Harvard too. But, and we took main characteristics of these previous models of the interior planets to build this simple model, our model for the interior of massive first planets. It's made, we just take a planet made by two well-differentiated chemical and mineralogy shells. The first shell is a rocky mountain. Even, in fact, the shell is divided into two different minerals in slates that are olivine and perovskite. This is for the upper mountain layer, and this is for the lower mountain layer. And of course, we have a core, planet core, made by iron and some light elements alloyed with iron. This is just a schematic figure about how our planet is made in the interior. Of course, to get the properties of the planet inside, we need to calculate the pressure, the density, and gravitational field. And for that, we use the continuity and Adams redemption and hydrostatic equation that after we evaluate, we can get the density, the gravity, and the pressure profiles for the interior of the planet. And close to the equations of the interior, we need an equation of state for the material in the interior of the planet. So we choose the linear equation, that is a well-known equation of state. And why we choose the linear equation is because it works better for pressures found in super-Earths. The interior of super-Earth that goes from, in a range from 100 to 1,000 gigapascals. So we choose this kind of equation of state. And of course, if we are working with planets in a range of masses from 1 to 10 Earth masses, all these properties of the interior, as we say, density, pressure, mass, gravity, will be scaled with the mass of the planet. So from the solution of the equations that I showed you, we can find these different profiles for different masses and, of course, for different type of super-Earths. And we can find some laws like the dependence of the radius of the planet with the mass of the planet, that is perfectly a power law, and it is the same for the size of the mass and the radius of the core of the planet. Close to the interior model, we need a magnetic field model to establish the properties of the planetary magnetic field. So, as you maybe know, the principle of magnetic field is the liquid core of the planet, the interior of the planet, and the fluid movements and convective movements of the liquid core of the planet. And this theory about the creation of magnetic field through these movements is well known as the dynamo-generated magnetic fields. The main properties of this kind of search for the magnetic field can be expressed in terms of a source of power that we call, well, not we, the authors on this topic call the power density. This power density refers to the energy available to produce the currents and the conductive fluid to make possible the magnetic field. And of course, this power density depends on a source of heat that is transported from the inside of the core, that is the power transported by convection. Plus the convection, this power depends on the rotation rate of the planet, the density and the volume of the convective region, that in the case of the terrestrial planet, it is the liquid layer of the outer core, and of course depends on the size of this liquid region, that it's the relation between the size of the core and the size of the solid inner core, in the case of planets that have a solid inner core. And on the other hand, the magnetic field can be expressed like a simple power loss of some key properties of magnetic fields. One of them is the Lorentz number, that is a measure of the intensity of the magnetic field, and as we see, that depends again on the power density of the convective heat. And more important for us is the Rossby number, that is a quantity that measures the relation between inertial forces and Coriolis forces, and give us an idea about how the convection currents are working inside the planet. And again, it depends on the power density too. We choose from over and all a modified local Rossby number. If we see this is a general property of the region where the magnetic field is growing and forming, but this is a specific value of the Rossby number in a specific point inside the region. So this local Rossby number depends on these other magnetic properties that we know as Ekman number and the Prandtl and magnetic Prandtl numbers, that relates the viscosity and the permeability and conductivity of the liquid region. Sorry. And this key number that relates is the rate of the inner core size to the complete core of the planet size. And this number, this Rossby number, establishes the regime of the dynamo in the planet. So if you have a Rossby number less than 0.04, we have a magnetic field mainly dipolar, and on the other hand, if the Rossby number is higher than 0.1, the magnetic field is mainly multipolar, in the multipolar region. And a proof of this kind of power laws that govern the behavior of the magnetic field is the relation between the Rossby number and the power density that we can see is just here we have a good relation between these two numbers. This is the local Rossby number as a function of the combination of these other magnetic properties and the dependence on the rate between the inner core and the outer core sizes. So, from this we can find which is the region of the dynamo the planet, the terrestrial planet. And this is made by, this is measured, by the polarity. And the polarity depends on which part of the magnetic field is it's dominated by the dipole moment, and is compared with all the average magnetic field just in the core quantum boundary, so just in the limit of the core. And the other relation that gives us information about the dynamic region is this number, PD, that it's a relation between the average strength of the field in the volume of the shell where is the magnetic field functioning, and of course the component, the dipolar component of the magnetic. Depending on these values, we can put a dynamo in the dipolar region or in the multipolar region. Low values for the PD are only found, for example, for dipolar dominated dynamos. So these are just features of the dynamo that we need to establish the magnetic properties of the planet. And finally, we can calculate the average magnetic field depending on the power density. Power density, and the polar component of this average magnetic field, of course, can be bounded using these prescriptions. If I want a magnetic field dominated by the polar component, we need a polar component that is close to this product. And of course, we can have regimes between dipolar and multipolar that presents reversals as our own geomagnetic field. And of course, the other region possible is the multipolar region. For this criteria, we use a maximum fraction of the polarity close to 0.7 and a minimum close to 0.3. So from 0.3 to 0.7, we can have dipolar with reversals magnetic fields. And this values establish, of course, three different kinds of dynamos, where we have completely dipolar dynamos, dipolar with reversing dynamos as our own dipolar magnetic field. Here's the air value, and we have completely multipolar dynamos depending on all these properties, magnetic properties of the planet. So the third model that we need to establish some magnetic properties or establish the protection of habitability of super-Earth is the thermal evolution models. There was a few previous models in the literature dedicated to the evolution, to thermal evolution of terrestrial planets. The first one was published by Cuartas et al., and they did a solution for the thermal evolution based on solve the equilibrium equations for entropy in the core of the planet, and plus to this, they proposed a basic model for the heat transport from the mantle, and based on these two hypotheses or theories, they describe a thermal evolution for planets between 1 and 0.4 Earth masses. And from the another thing that they choose is they suppose that all the planets are rapid rotating, so they have very fast rotational period and using scalar laws for the magnetic field, just like us. And they found an upper bound around 2 air masses to have a strong protective planetary magnetic field. This is an important result from the Galileo-Sedol model because we are agreed with this. And so.
I was just wondering what means fast? Like how fast does it rotate?
Oh, okay, it's a pretty good question. A fast rotator is the Earth. We complete a round in 1 day. Our period is just 1 day, but rotational periods can have many different values. We will establish a classification of different types of rotators. So this is one of our results. So I will show you. But rapid rotators suppose that the planets have a 1 day period of rotation. Okay. Okay. And the second thermal evolution model is coming from Takinami model in 2011, and they are focused in the role of the mantle in the direction of the heat. And of course, they have a really good trait about the rheological properties of the mantle. From this, they compute the total energy transported by convection in the mantle and the energy that is released from the core mantle boundary for masses between 0.1, it's a Mars-like mass, and 10 Earth masses. In this model, the thermal evolution is affected by a strong dependence on pressure and temperature in the mantle viscosity. This is one of the most unknown properties for the mantle of terrestrial planets, and is this viscosity and its dependence on pressure and temperature. So,
what do you mean with mantle viscosity?
Mantle what?
Viscosity.
The mantle is a really viscous fluid. It's not solid. So I'm talking about the viscosity of this really viscous fluid. Okay? It's not a solid. The planet, the Earth, the Earth-like planets do not have a solid mantle. Okay? Only the crust is solid. And in some cases, as I will show you, the inner core is solid, but the layers between the inner core and the crust are fluids. Okay?
Yes, viscosity is 0 for water, and 1 for solid things.
Yeah, from something like that. Okay, and they can to calculate the density and the lifetime of the magnetic field for the planets, and they found that flow strongly depend on the initial temperature profile. The temperature profile refers to the way as the temperature is behavior in the interior of the planet, which is characterized by this parameter, that is the rate between the temperature of the core and the load mantle. There are a big gap in the temperature just in this place inside the planet. So, we did this table to compare these both models, and of course we found something interesting depending on the mass of the planet and depending on other features like if the planet has tectonic activity, so they can have tectonic plates or not tectonic plates. This is standardly, yeah. And highlight this special results for planets of 1 Earth mass, 1.5 mass, and 2 masses. In the case of the Caídos model, that he found, for example, that for a planet with 1 Earth mass, the inner core start to grow 2.8 billion years after the formation of the planet. The intensity of the magnetic field of the surface of the planet is around 90 nanotesla. And more important is the time, the lifetime of the dynamo, the lifetime of the magnetic field of the planet, that is more than 10 billion years. The same for the 1.5 planet. The inner core started to form a little later, and the magnetic field is not so intense, but the lifetime of the dynamo is more than 10 billion years, and for 2 masses we have these values. As you see, for masses higher than 2 Earth masses, there are not an initial time for the formation of an inner core. The core of these massive planets are liquid permanent. It never starts to solidify. And for the tachynomic model, we can find for a 1 Earth mass that there is a special result that is close to our geomagnetic dynamo. The inner core starts to grow at 2.7 billion years. The magnetic field is around 80 nanoteslas in the surface, and the time for the dynamo is around 10 billion years. This is only for comparison, because we will show you our own results on this. Based on these 2 models, the Caídos model that is focused on the core thermal evolution, and the tachynomics model that is based mainly on the mantle heat transfer, we developed our own thermal evolution model that we call the reference thermal evolution model. And we can find some properties that all thermal models must to predict. And that properties are, first, the total convective power, because this is the main source of the magnetic field itself. Okay, it's the main source of energy for the magnetic field. The radius of the solid inner core, it's very important to know when and how much the inner core grows, because it will determine the size of the liquid region where the magnetic field is developing, and determines 2 new sources of heat or of energy for the planetary magnetic field. And the time of the inner core formation is, of course, the time when the magnetic field, when the inner core appears, and the total dynamo lifetime that a planet needs to be protected during long times, enough to develop life or something like that. So this is a first result of our reference thermal evolution model. Here we are showing the inner core radius in time, the time of the dynamo, the duration of the magnetic field depending on the planet mass, and the convective power depending on the planet's mass. One thing that we can see here is that low mass planets have a longer lifetime diameters and establish an inner core, and that didn't happen for the higher mass planets. For example, this is 0.5, 1, 1.5, 2, 4, and 6 Earth mass planets. First we work with the.
I'll go back to the previous.
Okay.
I think there is a suggestion here. We could change this reference thermal evolution model to thermal evolution reference model, and in that
Thermal
way,
evolution reference model.
and that way we can call it term.
Okay.
And this is to remember. This is not just in America.
Okay.
But I also want to add that actually we are not calling our model thermal evolution reference model because we are not the reference. But in our models, we have a set of parameters that are the reference for the rest of our results. So actually,
It's our own reference model.
yes, this is
Okay.
our reference.
This is reference for us.
for us. It's not for the community.
Not for the universe. It's because we need a model that predicts all these properties and that
Can you compare
which
changing some value?
yeah, and the measure for the geomagnetic dynamo. Okay, so we can change the data. Okay. Again, talking about the evolution, the thermal evolution of the core, the thing that we do is to calculate the quantity of heat that is coming out from the core. That depends on these other quantities. All of these are sources of heat inside the core of the planet. The first one is the circular heat, that is just because the difference of the temperature, the gradient of the temperature. The other one, and very important, is the latent heat that is released at the same time when the inner core starts to grow, because the solidification of the iron, it starts to release latent heat. And the other one is this compositional heat or gravitational heat that it's related with the release of light elements from the solidification of the inner. So these are two new sources for the energy for the dynamo that appears when the inner core appears. Like the left. Yes. Okay. This is related with the temperature change with time. But this is more related with the properties of the material. This is related directly with some heat capacities of the material in the core, especially the elements that are released by the core solidification. This is equal to a few heat capacities plus, multiplied by the differential of the temperature of the core. This, as we see, all these heat sources depends on the evolution of the temperature of the core of the planet. Okay? This is in fact the same. Sorry. Yeah, it's the same. No. This depends directly on this. Okay? And there is another equation that is important for us, and it's the entropy sinks. The total entropy produced by the release of heat inside the core. So we have an entropy related with the latent heat and entropies related with the secular cooling, with the release of light elements, and this other entropy, it's very important. It's accounting for the sink of entropy due to the conduction of heat along the core. So, and we'll see that this is an important factor in the thermal evolution. And there are the way as we can calculate these different entropies, and again are related with the evolution of the temperature profile in the core boundary, and this is related again with the same. One thing that we have to take into account is that the temperature profile depends not only on time, because the planet are evolution, but in the place that we choose inside the planet. So the temperature depends on radius and time at the same time, and we can express that dependence like a function that loves the dependence on the radius of temperature, and of course the dependence on time of the temperature at the core. And after some algebra, we can turn the equation for the heat coming out from the core. We can transform this in a differential equation of the temperature of the core and time. This mc is the mass of the core, and these c's are heat capacities containing all the radial dependencies of the temperature. So we suppose that core and matter have an adiabatic temperature profile. So this function of the temperature and the radial dependence on the temperature obeys an equation, an adiabatic equation like this. This is from Valencia Paul, I forgot the reference here. And we can approximate the temperature profile to this type of equation, where this quantity is a length scale for the temperature in the region of the convective region. Okay, and of course this is the radius of the core, and this is whatever which any point inside the region. And yes. No, it's not constant in radius. Depends on the radius.
But if R is equal to the core radius.
Okay.
On that time.
When this R is equal to the radius of the core, this temperature is the temperature of the core.
Is that the same point?
Yeah. At the time, yes. But we are talking about this R.
Yes.
When these both are equal, this temperature is just the temperature in the core, just and some time. Okay? Or any time. So, finally, the total heat produced by the core in function of the temperature of the core is calculated using a theory of the boundary line theory from Stevenson, and given by this equation, where again we found this delta dC and B, that is the gap of the temperature between the core and the low mantle. Okay? And other quantities there are the thermal conductivity of the lower mantle temperature, and the Nusselt number at the core that relates the Rayleigh number in the core and the Rayleigh number in general for the region of the convective shock. So we need the time for the inner core formation, and for that we need to compare the temperature and the iron solidus, because just in the moment when the temperature of the core is equal to the iron solidus, it starts to be solidified. So we use Lieberman law to calculate the solidus of the iron, and exactly when the temperature is equal to the solidus, then we start to have an inner core, and a solid inner core. And the radius of this inner core grows with time, depending on this equation that relates again the scale height of temperature of the adiabatic scale, that is this quantity, and the ratio between the gradient of the solidus and the thermal gradient measured at the radius of the inner core. So we can know when and how the inner core is growing. And finally, we can calculate the time for the lifetime for the dynamo, depending on the convective power available. And finally, we can okay, we can express this quantity like depending on the total entropy sinks and the temperature of the core. When this heat, when this convective power becomes negative, so this means that the entropy caused by the conduction of heat is higher than the other sinks of entropy. The convection is not longer efficient and the dynamo is shut down. That establishes, of course, the lifetime for the dynamo. The other part of the thermal evolution, of course, is related with the mantle. How the heat, the energy, is transported from the mantle. Here we can calculate the quantity of heat crossing the mantle as this is the heat related, released for radioactive elements, the secular cooling of the mantle itself, and of course the heat coming out from the core of the planet. There are two different regions that we analyze to establish how the heat is coming out from the mantle. The first one is supposing that we have tectonic activity, so we have more mobile leads. And the other one is supposing that the crust is solidified and there is no plate, so we have an extended lead. And we choose some initial conditions for the temperature of the mantle, for the temperature of the core, and based on this, so we can calculate the amount of heat that is released through the mantle to the outside of the plasma. One of the most uncertain quantities in the model, as we say before, is the viscosity of the mantle, because it's dependent on the pressure and temperature. So for high pressures and temperature, the lower mantle, of course, is it's suffering more pressure and temperature, we choose a Navarro model that expresses the matter in terms on all these quantities. Here we have, for example, the gas constant. This depends on the size and growth of the material of the matter. This depends on the all of these are properties of the material that depends on pressure and temperature. And for the upper mantle, this is one type of material that we call perovskite, that is silicates very pressure and heated, and the upper mantle is made mainly for other type of silicates that is olivine. And we choose another equation to estimate the viscosity of this part of the mantle. So we have two different phases of mineral with different type of viscosity. So,
maybe an obvious question, but are you requiring two models match at some median point?
yeah.
Or does this give you additional information somehow?
Yeah, but what happens, of course, there are layers where both are equal, are the same.
So the models are just
Yes. Yes.
you can do this.
Yeah. Okay. Now, based on all this, I will show you some results that we get from our hypothesis and using these models for the interior of the planet, for the magnetic field, and for the thermal evolution. The first one was about the role of the rotation in the magnetic field. So, we want to know how the rotation is involved in the dynamo region. 5 minutes? Oh, okay. And for that, we calculate the Rossby, the Rockwell number Rossby, depending on time, on the mass planet, and the period of rotation, and of course, the density, the radius of the core, the convective power, all these quantities that are related with the magnetic properties. What we found is the next. For example, this is the way as the local Rossby number evolves with time for different masses and for a constant period of rotation and for a variable period of rotation. Of course, the black line corresponds to 1 Earth mass, and this is the Earth value. And the blue and red, for example, is for 1.5 and for 2 Earth masses. So we can see how the dynamo starts being totally polar when the inner core starts to grow. The dynamo have new sources of energy and goes to the polar reversing region. And if you have a variable rotation period after a lot of billion years, you can get and reach the multipolar region. So this is a diagram of mass rotation for the lifetime of the dipolar magnetic field. Here, depending on the mass of the planet and depending on the period, this is the duration in billions of years of the dipolar. So we can see how for low mass planets and gravity rotators, the lifetime of the magnetic field is higher and better than for slow rotators and low mass planets. And this is for the intensity of the magnetic field at the surface, and again, slow rotators with low mass planets are better than rapid rotators and high mass planets.
The other way around. Rapid rotators.
Here's rapid rotators, and here slow rotators. This is for one mass, one aircraft planet, and we are comparing the evolution of the magnetic field depending on the period of rotation. For example, this is for 4 days of rotation, and this is for 1 day of rotation. So, as you can see, for a longer period of rotation, the dynamo grows and it's more multipolar than for a slow rotator. And this is a graphic for lifetime of the dipole for different masses. So here we can see how rapid rotators have dynamos with more time, lifetime, and slow rotators have dynamos with less time of lifetime dynamo.
There is the answer.
Okay. See, rapid rotators is close to 1.5 days, and slow rotators is until 4 to 5 days of rotation, and after all, the rest are very low, very slow rotators. So, and this is the component, the dipolar component for different masses, and of course, again we see how low mass planets are magnetically talking are better than high mass planets. This is the Rossby number. This is the value for the magnetic field for the dipolar component of the magnetic field. And again, this is the same for different periods of rotator. This is 1 day, 1.5 days, 2 days, and 3 days. When the period is growing, the polarity of the magnetic field is fall down. Okay, and we show some of the already discovered super Earths, and we classify them as rapid rotators, slow rotators, or very slow rotators, depending on its mass and its rotation period, and of course, it determines some habitable zone where the planets are very protected magnetically. So,
Maybe just the figures and just.
okay, I need to continue. Okay, the magnetic rotation of Jupiter. Those are the last results. So we are going to talk about the magnetosphere. The magnetosphere, of course, is the structure formed by the interaction between the planetary magnetic field and the interplanetary and the solar wind. And for the magnetosphere, there are some properties that are needed to calculate how the planet will be protected. And sorry, the first one is the dipole moment. That is a measure of the intensity of the magnetic field.
Only the mass, not in the because you cannot go to the equations.
The standard distance is the size of the magnetosphere, and the area of the polar cap is the size of the area in the magnetic field that is exposed to the solar wind. Here we apply again the term to different masses and different periods of rotations, and we find how the dipole moment and the local Rossby again evolves with time. And as you can see, for high masses like 4 Earth masses, the principle is grows, and we have a very strong magnetic field, and then the dynamo shoot down until 4 billion years. But for low masses like here, or like the 1 Earth mass planet, the polar moment grows when the inner core starts to grow, and it's more or less permanent during all the planet life. And here again we can analyze how the dipole moment evolves with time for different periods and different masses of planets, and how the planet is protected all along its history. For example, for 1 cubic year, the Earth had a magnetosphere that was only 4 planetary gravity, and right now we have a magnetosphere that is 10 planetary gravity. This depends strongly on the stellar activity. At the beginning of the stellar main sequence of life, the stars are very active, especially in ultraviolet and X-rays, and that is a key factor for the interaction with the magnetosphere and, of course, for the protection of the planet. From that time, the activity of the stars falls down, and of course the magnetosphere can be more protective and grows again. And this is the result of how the magnetospheres evolve for tidal local planets. So those are planets enclosing orbits of its stars, and here we show how the intensity of the field, the magnetopause, the size of the standard radius, of course the size of the magnetosphere, and how the area of the polar car evolves in time. And the same for node-locked planets. Okay, I will go directly to some of the most important results. We applied this to already discovered super-Earths inside the habitable zone of its host stars, like the GJ667cc, Gliese 581d, and HD 4307g, that are super-Earths inside the habitable zone of its host stars. And what we found is that its magnetospheres are pretty bad for these planets. For example, if we suppose a period of 1 day, or periods of rotation of 1 day for these planets, we can find how Gliese 581d and HD 4307g have dead dynamos, so they are not protected right now against the activity of the star, and they don't have any magnetic field at this time. And for GJ667cc, maybe it's still having some magnetic field, but the problem of this is that the planet is so close to the star, and the star is pretty active. So, conclusions. First, about the role of rotation. So we can estimate the maximum dipolar component of the magnetic field at the core matter boundary, and from that date we can establish an upper bound for the dipolar part of the magnetic field at the planetary surface. We use a few properties of the magnetic field. One was the average of the dipolar component at the surface of the field, and the total time of the dynamo to establish the region that dominates the magnetic field of the planet. what we found is that the planetary magnetic field properties depend strongly on the planetary mass and the rotation period, and from that we can establish that rapidly rotating super-Earths with masses close to the Earth mass have the best potential to develop long life and intense planetary magnetic fields. More massive super-Earths develop magnetic fields but are weaker, and they have dynamos, dipolar dynamos, that are slightly larger for longer rotational periods. And second, super-Earths with rotation periods with more than 3 to 10 days will spend the majority of the dynamo lifetime as a multipolar state that is not so protective for a planet. And we introduce a classification depending on the rotation period for super-Earths that we call rapid rotators, slow rotators, and otherwise very slow rotators. Planets inside the habitable zone of low mass stars that maybe will be tidally long in less than 1 gigayear will fall between these two classifications. It will be slow or very slow rotating tides, and on the other hand, planets unlucky could be any of the tides according to the prevalent period of rotation and of course its mass, its planetary mass. And about the role of the thermal evolution, we analyzed first the influence of the magnetic protection. We developed a model of thermal and magnetic evolution that will produce, well, the values for the Earth. We applied this model to already known super-Earths in the habitable zone, like GL 581G, HD 4307G, and our model predicts that maybe the dynamo of these two super-Earths have been already shut down, and the dynamo of this third super-Earth seems to still have a magnetic dynamo, but maybe it's not so protected. The dependence of the magnetic properties of planetary age, planetary mass, and period are found in for terrestrial planets inside the habitable zone, and this is something interesting. Contrary to what was found in previous work, tidal developing planets will be produced magnetic fields, in fact, and extended magnetic fields. Our model predicts a large magnetic field, for example, for GL581D against the action of the stellar wind of its hottest star, and finally GJ667cc has already lost maybe a large fraction of its volatiles, specifically water, if it had. And all the evidence completely make this planet something close to a Venus analog on our solar system. So you can find this work better explained and with more detail in our publications. The first one was made by Zulaga and I in the Icarus journal, and the second one was made for Jorge, Sebastian, Pablo, Cuartas, and I know just in the Astrophysical Journal. So thank you very much.
Questions?
There are no stupid questions.
We call it very much questions.
No. You're not that when you refer to these three stars where you apply the model,
The three one.
the three not stars,
Planets.
planets. Which ones you apply the model in? Like slide 54.
Yeah.
When you refer to them, you refer to the way that the planet should be. Or for me, it wasn't clear if it is just a prediction of the model, or there is evidence for the...
No, there isn't
because
any-
they don't have, or they...
No, wait.
It's just a prediction, there's no way...
We are supposing first that those planets are made like the Earth.
Okay, so it's
So,
just prediction.
because the model is based on an iron core and silicon mantle and weight between the mass of the core and the mass of the mantle. So, we are supposing that these super Earths are Earth-like planets. This is the first assumption. And another assumption that we take is we don't know anything about the rotation theory, for example, or the presence of an atmosphere, even the presence of a magnetic field in those planets. We are only hypothesizing. Yes, about
You
how.
have to be careful because actually what we are computing or predicting is the best case scenario
Yeah.
for these planets. Okay, so if the planets are different, they will be probably less protected than we are predicting. So if we predict that the planet is doomed in the best scenario,
Is doomed, really.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah. We are supposing that they are in the best scenario for magnetic protection. So we are choosing the lowest level of activity from the star. We are choosing the highest value of the magnetic field that can be produced by the planet. So they are in the best position. Even if we choose those properties for this planet, they are done. So, in fact, they are.
I imagine that indeed there is no way to verify the model of the regional in this case. There is no way to...
Not yet. Maybe Bernard and the EEL.
There is no way to apply to the solar system and try to see, I mean, it's kind of...
We did for the Earth, and we did for Venus type planet with some characteristics, and in fact, we proved the model and all the parameters, and it works. Yeah, it works well.
but actually Pablo is betting in salary for the future 10 years or 20 years. We discovered that these planets are actually habitable.
Oh,
Yes, Pablo says that they are not habitable
no,
at all. Okay.
at all. I am sure about that. So.
Any others?
So when you said it's the best case scenario, I mean, of course we have to start from something. In the Earth we know how it works or something. There's no way to make a better scenario by playing around, say, the size of the iron core or whatever.
Well, at the beginning, when we started to research with this, we was trying to find a lower and higher bounds for this protective scenario, and that we found is according with our models and according with our interactive model between the star activity and the magnetosphere, we only can say something about the best ones. We can say anything about the worst, for example. So we are trying to put the better properties for the planet and the better properties for the star to be well protected and
Yes, you miss a plot. Since this is something like a simulation of your defense, you miss a very important plot, which is the sensitivity of the model
yeah,
to the parameters.
yes.
And where you can see. And it's very interesting to notice that our Earth is located in a sweet spot in the parameter space. So actually our Earth is almost the best.
It's special.
Yes, the best case. Probably is a selection event. But if actually the Earth is in the sweet spot, this is very useful for this kind of models because you can fit very well the parameters for the Earth and then apply this
To other planets.
Okay, this is our bet also.
Yeah, and why we are comfortable with the model is because we can reproduce the main values for the magnetosphere and the protection of the Earth are inside the field of parameters, as Jorge says. So we think that we are trying to show if these planets have the best opportunity to be protected, but according with our model, no, sorry, but do you think that HD 40307G is habitable? No, Jorge and Pablo says no, it's not habitable. Okay.
Okay, thank you, John.